Grow Books and Harper Audio present Evergreen Tidings from the Baumgartners by Gretchen Anthony, performed by Donna Postel, Andi Arndt, and Eric G. Dove. Be it labor great or small, do it well or not at all. Children's Rhyme. June. One would think being treated like a daft old Betty by a police officer with mustard on his lapel would top Violet's all-time list of humiliations. But after the fall of Gomorrah she'd just witnessed, it barely registered. "Mrs. Baumgartner," he said, as if repeating her name would help. "Why won't you tell me who threw the first punch?" "Like I told you, officer, I couldn't see. I went momentarily blind." "But you can see now." "For heaven's sake," she said she'd gone blind, not soft in the head. "Of course I can see now." She raised her finger to his name badge. "Officer Clive Bailey." She paused to let him absorb her demonstration of faculties. "Officer Bailey, I couldn't see who threw the first punch, but believe me, I know very well it wasn't my husband. Nor could I see what happened next because of the stars and the buzzing, like a swarm of bees in my head and before my eyes." "Bees?" Officer Bailey made a note. "No, not bees." Now that she was on record, she thought she ought to be exact. "Like pins. Hundreds of tiny, sharp pricks, piercing the blackness. And then a million streams of blinding light. Really, I thought my brain was about ready to rip in two." She noticed the officer's right eye had begun to twitch ever so imperceptibly where lid met lash, but he did manage to record the words, "blinding light." That would have to suffice. "Okay, so if you were blind, how did you manage to leave the scene?" "My husband, of course. Edward Baumgartner. He's a distinguished scientist, so I can assure you that he has no tolerance for violence. A man like Edward only uses his hands for the good of others." She paused, and then added, "even when he would have had every right to punch the man groping his meaty fingers across his wife's backside." The twitch in Officer Bailey's eye escalated to full-blown mutiny, and he began to worry at it with the back of his wrist. "I'm confused. A man groped your backside, or he groped his own wife's backside?" "How on earth could he have groped his own wife's backside? She was off pawing at Pastor Norblad like a Parisian streetwalker." Officer Bailey's hand was so busy controlling the twitch in his eye that none of this was making it into his notes. "Aren't you going to write that down?" The officer sighed and shook his head. "I've got enough." He closed his notebook with a defeated slap and went to slip it into his breast pocket, then stopped. "One last thing, actually. A few people reported something I can't seem to make sense of. They reported hearing a woman scream." He flipped back and forth through his pages of notes. "Here it is. They say she screamed, 'Was it intercourse?'" He raised a single eyebrow and looked directly at Violet. "Any idea who that might have been?" Yes, Violet knew. Of course she knew. The last 6 months, however, had painted in stark contrast the difference between knowing and understanding. 6 months ago, she knew she was married to a world-class scientist. She knew their daughter was on track to exceed her father's success. Violet knew that she herself had meticulously navigated motherhood, raising a successful child during an era when it was both necessary to direct her every move, while acting as if Pinocchio had no strings. But what did she understand about this family?
Sample complete. Ready to continue?